Welcome to Naphy Paints, and the next video will be how I paint the basic freehand, so checkers and triangles. Let's crack straight in. So here I've already laid down my Abaddon black as a base, and now I'm going over with Ceramite white, just getting a rough outline. Just again, nothing too special, just taking my time, just mapping out the checkers. This one's a little bit tricky because the loincloth I'm painting on changes the angles a little bit, so just do your best to figure out which way you should go. But that's a real basic mapping of where I want to lay down the colors. Then once I'm happy with that, I'll water down the Ceramite white, probably 90%, 80-20 in favor of water to the Ceramite white, and I'll just start filling in where I want to put the white and just leaving the black squares. You don't have to be too neat here because you're going to have to apply a few coats of the Ceramite white. I think in this case it was about between 6 and 7 watered down layers of Ceramite white. So yeah, just keep blocking those in. If you've got any squares that are slightly too big or slightly too small or on a wrong angle, you can just tidy them up later so you don't have to stress too much. This is just getting a basic feel of where you want to put things. Just being careful not to touch the belt since it's already been finished. So once I'm pretty happy with the basic shape that I'm getting, I'll just finish this last square I think here. Yep, so I'll just put a little bit of paint in there. Just rotating the model side to side just to make sure I get the right angle. So then again, you just seen that I've pulled a little bit of the paint off, it's a little bit wet, but I can always just fix that later. You don't want to go too thick here, otherwise you're going to get real chunky white at the end. You want it to be smooth, so just really water it down. Slowly build it up. For the first few coats you won't notice it, but once you get to the end it'll come out like a nice clean white. Yeah, so once you're happy with the loincloth, well, I'm happy with the loincloth there. Moving on to the gun. Now again with the gun, this is a base coat of Kantor blue. The Kantor blue, what I do here is exactly the same with the Abaddon black. You can use any colour, so if you want to go for the red or a pink or whatever you like as a base coat, and just mapping it out. So with the gun, I'm thinking about going checkers, and if for some weird reason I decide to put some like zigzags and triangles in it. But to get a rough, even, design, I go into quarter panels here first. So try to quarter everything off the best I can. And then once I'm happy with that, I'll go in between those lines. So I'm just laying it down here. So again, nothing too special, just as neat as possible and as straight as possible. You can always come back and fix it up later. So for this one I think I'll lay down checkers here. So yeah, I'll go in the middle here. So I'm going to map out my checkers later. And I think in the next two panels I try to put this weird triangle zigzaggy design. Oh no, I'm going to go back to the checkers here first. Yeah, so just working out roughly. Again, you can't notice, but when I'm doing this sort of bit, I'm sort of looking around the other side of the model to see where I should roughly line up to give myself a little bit of a guide. So just make them as even as possible. It's just laying down my basic shape for the checkers, and then I'll do the other side too. I think this part is a little bit longer, so I need to put the extra checker in here. yeah, there's more blue. So again, just rough outline, have a look around the side, and then just try to line it up as neat as possible. Okay, so I'm happy with that there. So I've got a basic checker design. Now here, I'm going to put down this, again, I don't know why I chose to do it, this weird sort of basic zigzag triangle pattern. So here I'm just always just looking ahead, what should I aim at, getting a rough idea about how big I want the triangles. So just pulling it back there, give it a basic triangular shape. There we go, pull it down and then back again. Nothing too fancy, but when you do this over an army or an entire model, it does look quite nice. So there's little like vents on this gun, so again, just roughly mapping it out, not worrying about those vents too much. They'll come out later when I wash the model, those vent details. And then we'll just do the, yeah, I'm just having a look there. So I just checked to see roughly how big my triangles were, so I can by eye match it. Yeah, these ones are a little bit rushed, could probably gone a bit slower there, but again, we'll fix that later. So here, to put the middle one in first, it's always the easiest, and then paint out from that. Alright, so once I've got the basic design of the shapes I'm looking for, just like the black, I'll go back in with the Ceramite white. Again, trying to be as neat as possible, because you're going to lay down quite a few coats of this watered down white. You don't want to lose too much of the shape if you're messy. Also, you could probably paint, you know, opposite, where you could lay down the white as the base and then fill in with the darker colors, but for some reason this is the method I chose, to lay down the darker color first and then paint the white over it. But yeah, whatever suits you. And there's one of those vents, just fill that in. So you can see how watery the paint is there. It's like a wash almost. So just colouring in nice and slowly. It's starting to take shape now. You're starting to get an idea of the pattern. And just slowly working my way around the model. Just continually filling in this white. Ceramite white is a bit of a tricky paint. For one, it's always going to dry in the pot, so it's a pain in the ass to try to keep you know, nice and smooth. So I'd suggest probably not using Ceramite white as I've done. If you got another white, that'd be fine, but if you want to use it, it's still it's a good color, it's just a bit tricky to use. So here I think I was a bit confused with what I should do with this vent. So once you've got the basic first mapping of the white down, you just start filling it in, and that's roughly what you're going to be left with, a real rough white. And now here we're going to go back in with a few more coats and slowly build up the white until I'm happy with the brightness. You can see now a little bit here where I'm starting to lose a little bit of the shape, so the square's not looking very square anymore, and the triangle's a little bit rounded. But once we come back in a later step, we can really sharpen those shapes up. So I'm not too concerned here. This is a very slow and tedious process, so maybe don't use white if you don't like repainting in the same areas over and over again. But this should work with most colours. Don't be scared to try other colours. It's just I'm using these because I've chosen these for my Ork army. Alright, so once I've got all the white down, I'm happy with how bright it is. As you can see, the squares aren't exactly square here. So now we're going back with the Abaddon black, and I'm just really slowly trying to sharpen up the squares now. So this part, you're gonna get, if you get the shaky hands, just stop and just reset, because you don't want to get too much black on the white, because it's a lot harder to get the white back up than if you get a little bit of white on the black. So just slowly working my way around the model. Here I can start to notice if I've got a square or a triangle or whatever shape you're painting too big or too small. You can start to even them out a little bit. You don't have to be exact, like every square doesn't have to be the exact size, because when you step back from the model from 3-4 feet, it's going to look fine. Try to be as as accurate as possible, but don't stress over it. So you're just working my way around the little loincloth here, just putting in the black, just very small brush strokes. You don't want to rush this. So the corners I find are the tough part, where you're trying to bring a nice sharp corner to the other square there at the top. So always just working back and forward. You've probably noticed I don't stick to one square. I'll sort of see something wrong with one square, I'll just paint that part. Then I'll see something wrong with another square, I'll go back and paint that part. And it's sort of all, at the end, it'll start to tie in. So this part down here was a little tricky, because I don't know if you can see on the camera, but the loincloth has a little bit of a fold in it. So just trying to think how the square would look around the bottom of the fold here, and just adjusting the model to get the best angle. So I enjoyed this part of the process. Applying the watered down white is the killer, but once I've got that down, this part is quite fun. I enjoy this, just take my time and nice and relaxing. And then once I get this step done, I think I'll move on to the blue of the gun. So we're just having a look now. We can zoom in. Yep, there we go. So it's a rough idea. We'll sharpen that up again later with the white. So we do the same thing with the blue. In this case, it's Kantor blue. So just get the right angle I'm happy with. Now this looks really messy. It doesn't even look like triangles anymore, but hopefully as I paint it, it'll start to sharpen it up and you'll get a bit of idea what I'm going for. So just working my way around that triangle. Again, nice and slowly. You don't have to be this neat. Being Orks, I've probably gone a little too neat. So you can make them as neat or as messy as you like. But yeah, you want to get the basic shape down. Having a rounded triangle, I don't know, just doesn't look good to me. So we really want to get a nice sharp point on those triangles. So just work that one down a little bit. Yep. Okay, so this part here is starting to look a little bit better. It's camera angle, sorry for the bad angle, but you could roughly see they're starting to look semi-decent now. Just filling in any blue that I might have missed. Again, try not to go too thick, because you're going to get streaks. So really just take your time, thin your paint. You don't want watery consistency, but you don't want to just paint straight out of the pot, because you'll end up with big chunky blobs as your squares. So here we're going to put a couple of squares in, really start to bring out the pattern I was going for from the beginning. I think there's a square up the top here. So there's too much paint on the brush there, so I've just wiped off the excess. I've tidied up all the white. It's starting to look okay. So now the next step, we'll just have a look at the loincloth. Yep. So they're looking okay. We've got our rough shapes now, and they look like what we're aiming for. So now, instead of the darker tone or the darker color, I'm going in with the white now. So this is Ceramite white out of the pot, and this is just trying to tidy up any black or blue or whatever color you've decided to go with around the model. So just going around, really take your time here, because the more you touch the black, you're gonna have to go back and fix it. And if you get more on the white, you're gonna have to back and forward, back and forward. You want to try to be as neat as possible here, so you don't have to keep, swapping and changing between the two colors. So just work around just really slowly, Again, you don't have to be this neat. You can have your squares or your shapes, a little bit messier around the edges. But if you want to go for a real crisp design, then yeah, just go slow. So we'll just do this part here, and I think we'll be on to the next step. Okay, so I'm happy with where I'm at now, so it's time for the next step. This is a watered down 50-50 water with Nuln oil, and I'm just going to apply this as neat as possible only to the white. I'm not really worried about too much pooling. You don't want big black pools, because they'll just defeat the purpose of laying down the white originally. But a little bit of pooling will help around this loincloth, especially give it a little bit of shape. Once I've got this laid down, I'll move on to the gun. Yep, that looks okay. Now onto the gun. So this is where you'll see those vents stand out there. It's just pulled into one of the vents then. So it takes what was just a really boring flat sort of double triangle with a square there. You've got more of a shape because you've got the vents in the middle of them. So it looks a lot better just by adding this simple 50-50 Nuln oil with the water. So again, it's being as neat as possible, going around on only the white. You don't want to get on the blue. If you get a little bit on the edges of the blue, once you get to the highlighting step, you can always fix that up, so that's okay. But you don't want to just soak the whole thing in blue. It'll darken down the blue way too much. So now we're on to the highlighting stage. So I go with two highlights on the blue. First is Caledor Sky. So just edge highlight around the entire section of this blue. So with the design, the more difficult your design, the more work you're gonna have to do later with the edge highlighting. But just doing a basic, triangular zigzag design here, it's pretty easy. And again, just around the squares, laying down the Caledor Sky. This color is on top of the Kantor blue is not noticeable, but I've tried to skip it before, and it just doesn't work. I sort of need this in between. But if you're using, say, a red, go with the lighter red. If you're using an orange, go with the lighter orange. This is good for all colors. So it's around those vents, and now we're putting down the second highlight on the blue. This is a Teclis blue. Now I'm just going to pick out, just little tiny bits of the blue. I've probably got a little bit too much paint on my brush there. I might get away with it, but you just got to be just careful. You don't want to put a big blob on your Kantor blue, otherwise you're going to have to go back and tidy it up, which I think I do later anyway. But the Teclis blue will really bring out the blue, and you'll start to notice the brightness of the Kantor blue. So far it's looked very dark, but it's actually quite a nice bright blue. So we'll just go around the edges there. Again, not really thinking where I'm putting it. I maybe should, but just roughly laying down some nice edge highlights. And just around the front of the barrel here. Yep, just around there. And just on these squares here. Just putting down some more Teclis blue. Teclis blue is a really nice colour. I really like Teclis blue. It's easy to work with. I'm painting this straight out of the pot or onto a wet palette, then straight onto the model. There's no water. Yeah, I really like Teclis blue. Caledor Sky, I can't say much for it. It's given me a few problems. So maybe you want to think about maybe changing that blue to ultramarines or something like that. And then once I've got all the blue highlighted, I do the same. We'll go back in one more time. Just on that edge. Okay. Yeah. So now I'm going on to the black. So with the black, this is just the fang. The color is the fang, and this is again straight out of the pot. There's no water. It's a very easy color to work with. And I'm just putting that over the black. Now with black, you can highlight with really blues, greys. You can even use a white, a slightly darker white. But yeah, black, I like to make it look really bright. The Orks, my painting style for the Orks is quite comical. It's not very realistic. So I like everything just to stand out, so including the black. So I've gone with the fang here. And just taking my time. I've got a bit of the fang on the white there, so I'm going to have to come back when I highlight the white and fix that up. Alright, so that's down. And now we're going to put on the white highlight. This is just Kantor blue. Not Kantor blue, sorry. It's Ceramite white. And this has a little water in it, probably 90% ceramite to 10% water, just so I can pull the white along the edges. It just makes it a little bit easier to work with. And just taking my time. If you do happen to touch, the black or the blue, or whatever color you've chosen to use, it's okay. Just go back over it with the highlight you used before, but you just want to be as careful as possible. You don't want to do too many repaints here. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting so much of your time. Because this is quite time consuming to do this. So the fewer mistakes, the better. But don't worry, I make them all the time. It can be fixed, so that's okay. And that's the white and the black highlighted there. So it really brings the loincloth to life. What was just a boring loincloth is now, quite fun to look at. And then we'll do the same on the triangles and the squares on the gun. So just really slowly pulling it towards myself. I find it's the easier way. Doing it this way, pushing it away, I always struggle, but pulling it towards myself as much as possible is the easier technique for me. And we'll really try to define these triangles here. And then we'll go over to the squares, and then just working my way around the barrel of the gun. A bit of excess there, so we'll just wipe that off. Just make sure we're going for a nice thin line. My edge highlighting is my weakness. I'm not the best at it. I'm trying to get better, but yeah, just trying to make these lines as even as possible. It does give it a better result. If you look at the guys from Heavy Metal or anybody else who's painting tutorials who are really good at edge highlighting, you don't really notice them, but then over the entire model, they really stand out. Mine going a little bit wonky or a little bit thick in places, but you get the shaky hands, it's hard to avoid sometimes. And here we're just going to go around the vents. So again, just pulling it down on the triangle and then running it along the inside of these. Oh no, I didn't even bother to do it. I must have cut that one out. Anyway, so the last step here is we're just going to go with the Kantor blue, pure Kantor blue. We're going to paint inside our highlights now just to tidy up any little speckles of white we might have got on the Kantor blue, or if there's a Caledor Sky or Teclis highlight, like just in this corner here. I've gone a bit thick with the highlight, so just go back and tidy that up. And another one here. You can see the edge highlight's not very good, so we're just going to go back and tidy that up. The white I don't tidy up, so you've got to try and get those edge highlights pretty spot on. Otherwise you're going to have to repaint the white, wash it again, and then edge highlight. Where the blue is much more forgiving, and along with the black, you can just paint that straight on. And then once we've done that, that's it. The model is tabletop standard. This is gone on a single little Ork shooter boy, so from a distance this will look, fine from mixed in an army. And if you do this over your entire army, it'll really start to stand out. Now you can use this on Marines. I've done this on Slanesh, Space Marines. I've done it on Orks. Yeah, it can be good for any army. Yeah, he's coming around, and that's what the shooter looks like with his triangle square design. And hopefully we can see the loincloth. Yep, there's a loincloth there. So it looks good on a tabletop standard model. And thanks for watching Navy Paints. Catch ya.